My parents stood before me, frozen in place, as if waiting for the right moment to apologize. "Thank you for coming all this way," my mother said, her voice tinged with desperation as she cast her eyes downward. "We've heard you might be able to help save our nearly bankrupt factory, and we are deeply grateful." My father continued speaking without meeting my gaze. It struck me as ironic that the factory they sought help for was the very workplace of their daughter, the one they had abandoned in the cold mountains. "Let's discuss business," I said, urging them to look up. Both of them gazed at me in shock, recognition dawning on their faces. "Stella?" Their astonishment was almost comical, eliciting a laugh from me. "Now, how should I repay your gratitude? My name is Stella Green. I live in a city, but only the area around the station is really thriving. The rest is mostly rural, dotted with farms. My family once operated a small smithy, crafting and repairing agricultural tools. Since my great-grandfather's time, we expanded into making parts for farming machinery, running our factory on a substantial scale. We are a well-known, old family in the region. My father, Jan, is the president of Green Machinery, and my mother, Greta, serves as the executive director. I have an older brother named Elwin, who has always been exceptionally bright, our parents' pride. In this countryside, there's a significant expectation for the eldest son to succeed, and he met those expectations by gaining admission to a prestigious high school. In contrast, while my parents doted on Elwin, I often felt overlooked and ignored. The traditional mindset here holds that women will eventually leave their families. With my brother poised to inherit the family business, there were scarcely any expectations for me. A woman can't take over the family business. Once you finish high school, that's the end of it, my father declared coldly. At that time, I was in middle school, coming to terms with my role and deciding to focus on my studies. Yet, it was tough for a middle schooler to set such ambitious goals. I pressed on, fueled by determination. Elwin and I were so different that it was hard to believe we shared the same parents. In school, he excelled among the elite, steering his academic journey like a skilled captain. I, on the other hand, preferred physical pursuits over academics, bounding through the countryside like a deer or a goat. If there was one area where I surpassed my brother, it was athletics. Yet, fate was unkind, lacking the natural talents that Elwin possessed. I studied diligently, but my grades barely budged. Observing my struggles, my parents mocked me. "You're not like Elwin. Don't you realize your own shortcomings?" Their words pierced my heart, igniting a fire of indignation within me. Although there was a grain of truth in their criticisms, it only fueled my frustration. Then came the day of the midterm exam results. Despite my considerable efforts, my grades were disappointing, and I couldn't conceal my shock. I dreaded revealing them to my parents, but they insisted. When they saw my report card, they laughed. "We should have seen this coming. There's no value in investing in you anymore. It's hard to believe you share DNA with Elwin. Something must be wrong." As I sat before them, enduring their scorn, I silently prayed for the moment to end. Fortunately, my brother intervened, offering his help with my studies. Though he struggled to express his feelings to our parents, he was always my steadfast ally. "It might partly be my fault that they're so strict," he said, "but I'm always here for you." His warm encouragement moved me to tears. With his support, I felt I could face any challenge. However, when he passed the entrance exam for a prestigious university in the metropolitan area and left home, his absence created a void that left me to grapple with harsh comparisons. Elwin naturally excelled, showcasing his talents effortlessly, living in his shadow. I was determined to find my own path. I discovered joy in running, participating in the school track team, and dreaming of a future as a long-distance runner. I hoped to secure a recommendation from a prestigious school renowned for its relay races. While Elwin shone academically, he struggled with sports. In that regard, I felt a sense of superiority. Yet, my parents were more focused on his grades than on my running accomplishments. My efforts went unnoticed, and only Elwin's consistent academic improvements garnered our parents' affection. As Elwin approached his 18th birthday, my parents planned an extravagant celebration. With the date drawing near, my mother announced, "We must buy him an expensive watch. If you can't manage that, don't even think about going to university." I had no means to provide such a lavish gift. Unsurprisingly, the day arrived, relatives gathered, and a sumptuous meal was served at a renowned restaurant. I, however, felt like an outsider, left behind at home. Elwin deserves the finest because he excels. You're just obsessed with running, and being around him would only bring you misery, my mother said, her words cutting deep. After my parents and brother left, I sat alone, eating instant noodles. As I poured hot water into the bowl, the rising steam amplified my loneliness. Tears streamed down my face as sadness and frustration intertwined. During those lonely days, my brother, visiting home for summer break, introduced me to the wonders of the internet. He had graduated and started working at a prestigious company, seemingly maturing overnight. Here, it's an older model, but it's fast enough for surfing the web. Try it out. It might help with your studies, he said, smiling as he handed me the laptop. And take this too, I want you to learn from it. The book he gave me was a beginner's guide to programming. This marked my first step into the world of IT. Initially, I struggled with mathematics, but I found joy in creating programs. The thrill of seeing my projects come to life filled me with satisfaction, and gradually, I began to sense a future path forming, however vaguely. However, one day, my father abruptly dismissed that dream. Hey, are you playing on the computer instead of studying? I'm programming, not playing. Don't lie, you must be gaming on that thing. His accusation ignited my anger, and I retorted, people with outdated views like yours wouldn't understand how to utilize computers. That comment only fueled his fury. Watch your mouth, Stella. In a fit of rage, he seized the laptop and hurled it out the window. Why would you do that? You're still in high school, always just playing. Now that the computer is broken, maybe you'll study seriously. I watched, helpless, as he laughed smugly. The laptop had smashed against the ground, its screen shattered, its case cracked. Just as I was beginning to find my footing in programming and glimpse a hopeful future, I gathered the remnants of my broken laptop. Enveloped in deep sadness, the precious gift from my brother lay in ruins. With no money for repairs, it felt like my newfound dream was slipping away. Standing before the wreckage, despair washed over me. The cherished gift from my brother had turned to junk. With no funds to fix it, I felt trapped in my hopelessness. However, one day, as I trudged to school weighed down by my emotions, a friend offered an unexpected glimmer of hope. Why don't you use the school's desktop computers? The teacher approved, transforming the school's computer room into my new sanctuary. After class, a reliable desktop awaited me, a steady foundation in my life. As I spent more time with the school computers, a teacher who noticed my passion began to offer additional support. I immersed myself in programming throughout high school, gradually honing my skills. Then, during the summer of my sophomore year, I enrolled in a summer course in New York, suggested by my brother. I covered my transportation costs with money I earned from part-time jobs. I settled into the company dormitory where my brother worked, immersing myself in a programming course by day and attending special evening lessons with him and his quirky friend, Alan. Alan's a bit eccentric, but he's a good guy, so don't worry. He's not used to being around women since he went to an all-boys school, so be gentle with him, my brother advised. What are you talking about? I've had my fair share of interactions with women, Alan protested, feigning indignation. Oh really? When was that? My brother pressed, teasingly. Well, there was that folk dance in elementary school, Alan replied sheepishly. We all burst into laughter at his earnestness. Alan's innocence added a warm touch to our summer, and it fueled my passion for programming even further. By the end of the season, I had plunged headfirst into the world of coding, captivated by its endless possibilities. Alan was different from my brother. He carried himself with a polite, refined demeanor, reminiscent of a genteel upbringing. Though a bit quirky, I never sensed any malice from him and found myself quite charmed. As summer unfolded, I was still grappling with the aftermath of my computer being destroyed earlier. My brother had apologized for it, but during his summer visit home, he surprised me with a gift, a used laptop. It's a gift from Alan. He's pretty wealthy, you know. When I asked if he had any spare computers, he handed this over, my brother said with a mischievous grin. He said he wanted you to have it. Seriously, why would he do that? I asked, my cheeks warming as my brother playfully tapped my head. With my brother's guidance, my programming skills blossomed. I never imagined you'd take such an interest in programming, he remarked one day. Yeah, it's fascinating. Sometimes things go awry in the calculations, but fixing them feels so exhilarating, I replied, my enthusiasm bubbling over. Programming quickly transformed from a mere hobby into a profound passion for me. The thrill of watching my own programs come to life was indescribable. With this newfound drive, I made the decision to leave home, stepping away from the path my parents had envisioned for me. I turned my back on university life to pursue a career in a metropolitan company, clutching my new laptop as I charted my course toward the future. As I prepared for this new chapter under the biting winter sky, my parents unexpectedly called. I braced myself for a difficult conversation, but to my surprise, they suggested something entirely different. "How about we all go on a family trip?" my father proposed. Family vacations felt like a relic of my childhood, but we decided to use a hotel voucher my uncle had won. Excited to have my brother join us, I looked forward to the getaway. On the day of the trip, we set off to a hotel nestled in a snow-covered landscape, my father behind the wheel. To my astonishment, my parents were in high spirits, chatting animatedly about my brother's job and the struggles my father faced with his factory, leaving me feeling like a ghost in the background. The hotel itself was surprisingly luxurious, and we reveled in the warmth of the pool and the delicious meals, though my parents' kindness felt oddly forced. In the middle of the night, I awoke to the sound of whispered voices coming from my parents' room. "We can't afford to waste any more money on her food. If we leave her behind, she'll understand. It's time for a major cleanup," they agreed. The realization hit me like a cold wave. They were planning to abandon me. It felt as if I was simply meant to accept this fate. When the trip ended and we drove back, the atmosphere was subdued.
Conversations minimal as fatigue settled over us.
I was to be dropped off at the station, heading straight to my new workplace dormitory. Suddenly, my father piped up. "I feel like having coffee. Is there a vending machine around?" "There's a parking area up ahead. We can grab some coffee there," my brother replied.
My father beamed at this suggestion.
"Sounds good, let's take a break," he said. As we pulled into the parking area, my father turned to me. "Stella, go get us some coffee." I complied, stepping out to the nearby vending machines. I selected hot coffee for my father and brother, tea for my mother, and a milk tea for myself. Just as I was about to return, I noticed my father unloading my suitcase from the trunk. "Well, this is goodbye. It's too costly in time and fuel to drive you to the station. You're like a pet, so easily tamed with a bit of kindness." "Wait, isn't the station still far from here?" I asked, confusion flooding over me. "Do whatever you want, run or walk. You were on the track team. You should have the energy," he replied dismissively. "Are you serious? You need to manage on your own now. This is a clean break. You were more of a burden than anything," my father added coldly. My brother said nothing, gently draping my coat over the suitcase. I stood there, watching as their car disappeared into the distance, a mix of acceptance and resignation washing over me. Yet, deep down, I felt a flicker of hope. In that snowy parking lot, I realized I was poised to start a new chapter in my life. 10 years later, I found myself back in my hometown, thriving as a project leader at a new company. The day's work at the local factory prompted my visit, and a swirl of excitement mixed with painful memories flooded my mind as I approached the familiar building. "Stella," a familiar voice broke through my thoughts. "Brother," I turned to see him stepping out of a car, beaming and waving. "I was worried you might get lost. The scenery has changed quite a bit." "No worries, the GPS led me here just fine," I replied. He immediately shifted the conversation to work, explaining the high expectations for the project. "We need to be well prepared," he said, his tone serious. I grinned playfully. "Let's see how long you can keep that energy up. Don't underestimate me. The city has toughened me up," he shot back, confidence radiating from him.
You've really grown strong,
I remarked, genuinely impressed. "It's all about pushing myself. I had to," he replied with a hint of pride. Our reunion was orchestrated by this project. My brother had leveraged his experience in a large corporation to launch a startup, applying his mechanical engineering expertise to innovate struggling products. Now, our hometown factory faced a financial crisis, and that was why my brother reached out to me, proposing a collaborative project. "Let's head in," I said, gathering my spirits as we made our way toward the factory. The air was charged with anticipation, and memories swirled around us as we opened the doors. It was like a gust from the past, pulling me back into my childhood. And then I saw them, my parents, standing there as if frozen, waiting to offer their apologies. Thank you for coming all this way, my mother began, her eyes cast down. We heard you might be able to help our nearly bankrupt factory, and we're deeply grateful. My father remained silent, avoiding eye contact. Please, there's no need for formalities, my brother urged gently. No, we must show our sincerity to you, our esteemed guests from Allen Industries, who've come all the way from New York. As they continued their rehearsed apologies, I seized the moment to redirect the conversation. Let's focus on the business at hand. Their bodies tensed at my words, and for a moment, they froze. Wait a second, that voice, it sounds so familiar, they murmured, slowly lifting their heads to meet my gaze. Yes, I remember that voice too. It can't be, Stella, is that really you? I couldn't help but chuckle. So, you finally recognize me, huh? Yes, it's me, Stella, the one you abandoned in the snowy mountains. What are you doing here? We were informed someone from Allen Industries would be coming. Well, that's me. I'm now a project leader at Allen Industries, which is owned by Alan's father. After being left behind, Alan, who is a friend of Elwyn, reached out to help. Elwyn had anticipated what would happen that day and made arrangements. It was challenging, but I've managed to establish myself, and just to let you know, I'm married now. My spouse is a department head at Allen Industries. I was sent here under the president's orders to work on the rejuvenation project for this factory. Do you understand? Back then, my brother was furious with our parents for what they did, and he had discussed everything with Alan before I was left behind. That day, he slipped me a note. Our parents planned to abandon you during this trip. If anything goes wrong, call this number. So, when the situation arose, I did call, and Alan responded immediately. He admitted, slightly embarrassed, that he had taken paid leave in advance to be available for me. I'm so grateful you came to pick me up. It's been a while. How have you been? The situation in the mountains was dreadful. It really hurt, I said, tears filling my eyes. Alan silently loaded my luggage into the car and drove me away. I learned that the company I joined in New York was a subsidiary of Alan's father's company. With my brother's and Alan's support, I balanced studying and working for a year before enrolling in a night university. This arrangement allowed me to manage both my job and my education. After graduation, I successfully transferred to the company run by Alan's father, leveraging my expertise in construction management. As Alan was promoted, I became the project lead under his guidance. My respect for him gradually blossomed into love, and when he proposed, we tied the knot. I continued my career, getting involved in a project focused on reshoring production from overseas factories. The strong currency and rising labor costs abroad made overseas manufacturing less appealing, leading to renewed interest in domestic production. While searching for a new factory location, I received surprising news from my brother. Our family's factory was in financial distress. Once a supplier of machine parts to large corporations, my parents had slashed prices to the point of endangering its survival. With this context in mind, my brother and I visited the family factory. Upon seeing me arrive as part of Allen Industries, my parents suddenly exuded confidence. Now that Stella is here, we can finally let go of any pretense. It's only natural for a daughter to help her family in times of need. I met their gaze steadily. You seem to be misunderstanding something. I no longer see you as my parents. I intend to maintain purely commercial relations. How can you say that? How can you be so heartless? I don't remember raising such a callous daughter. This makes me genuinely sad, my parents exclaimed angrily. I remained calm as I explained the situation. The factory's current state stems from your mismanagement. Therefore, we will be replacing the entire management team with personnel from headquarters. In other words, this marks the end of your involvement. My father's face flushed with anger. The factory will be sold, and I should still be able to manage it, right? I shook my head, delivering the harsh truth. I cannot entrust this factory to you. What do you plan to do about the debts? This rescue operation is possible only because of Elwyn's efforts. What will happen to us now? My father pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. That's your challenge to face. Good luck. We can discuss the details later. As my brother and I walked away, I glanced back to see my parents slumped down in defeat. Well, that settles it, my brother remarked. It's not really the end, you know, it's merely the beginning. This factory is set to become a hub for domestic production. With the production management system you developed and my new machine tools, we have a real chance to be the best in the country. What? No, we're not just aiming to be the best in the country, we're going for global excellence. My brother laughed heartily, excitement evident in his eyes. Eventually, our parents sold the factory, but the proceeds didn't cover their debts. I later learned they were working in a harsh environment. Though they begged us for money multiple times, we ignored them completely. However, I couldn't just stand idly by, so I decided to send them the disposable hand warmers I collected during college, a fitting gesture considering they had left me out in the cold. In contrast, the factory we acquired has been revitalized and is thriving post-renovation. The new facility has streamlined processes from manufacturing to inventory management, creating job opportunities in the local community and receiving immense praise. Together with my husband, I'm spearheading new projects aimed at assisting American companies in their overseas expansions and business partnerships. While our lives are busy, we still carve out time to relax at that distant hotel a few times a year. Each winter, when the snow begins to fall, I think back to that parking lot, my heart stirring with nostalgia. This year, I find myself visiting that very spot once again. What's on your mind? Reflecting on the past again? My husband inquired gently. Yes, this place holds memories that I cherish deeply, I replied. Me too, everything started here, he said with a smile. I remember that day, despite it being midwinter, your face was as red as a boiled octopus, I teased, struggling to contain my laughter. Haha, and yours was so flushed you looked like a child, he shot back. We exchanged laughter, the warmth of our connection evident. Thank you, I love you, I said sincerely. No, thank you. Life is like a book, filled with diverse stories. The chapters created between us form a captivating narrative, one that I cherish deeply.